You guys can remember Better Call Saul Season 2, Episode 8, Fifi, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode, mainly because of how the last episode ended. I mean, I didn't really know what was going to happen, if Jimmy was going to take the offer, if he was going to not take it, if there was going to be a counter offer. I mean, I really didn't know what was going to happen, and once again, this was pretty much a moving pieces kind of episode. Like, we are definitely getting to the last two episodes. This is how we get to the last two episodes, and I will admit, there were some slow scenes in this episode. This was not my favorite episode this season, definitely. Mainly because of one thing that I will get into, but there were some incredible scenes this episode as well, and, I mean, it's Better Call Saul. Of course, there were amazing scenes. I definitely really loved, the majority of this episode, but there were some things that I didn't think was perfect about this episode, and probably the first episode in a while that I actually had some problems with, but I will get into it. Let's just get into this episode, because the first, 4 minutes episode was, one big tracking shot, and I thought it was really cool the way it was done, because we see at a U.S. borderway station in St. Teresa, New Mexico, we follow a Regalo Helado delivery truck, and it makes its way through the border station investigation, and what I love about this is that we don't know why we're following this truck, but for whatever reason, we're following this truck. The driver's ID and paperwork are checked, and by the way, I love the background music in this. It kind of reminded me of, a Pixar short, almost, just the way the background music was. It was really cool the way they were doing that, and the truck itself is checked out by agents who tap its walls and check underneath it with mirrors, and 2 tubs of boxes of ice cream are removed and set through an x-ray scanner, and finally the driver reloads the frozen treat, snags a popsicle for himself, and is back on the road. And again, we don't know why we're seeing this, but then in the middle of nowhere, he pulls the truck off the highway, gets out, walks into a field, stops at a rock, lifts it up, and grabs a gun that's been left in a hole and replaces the rock, and you can definitely start to tell, okay, there's a reason we're seeing this, because why is that gun there? I mean, obviously, there's a reason why there's a gun there. And then he jams his new empty popsicle stick into the ground, which is already littered with another couple dozen sticks, and again, we don't know what is going on here. But then we eventually realize what's going on, because later we see Mike. He's spending another night surveying Hector's ice cream shop. You know, as we know, he was seeking out where Tio was, and it's where the Regalo Helado truck makes a stop. And just as the lights go out at El Grigo Grenadar, Mike is ready to leave. Now we know why we followed that truck. Mike is then ready to leave. He spots Tio and Arturo arriving, and the shop owner unlocks the door to let them in. The former cop realizes that this is an important development and follows Tio and Arturo the next day as they go to a garage, and Tio drives his car inside. Shortly after the Regalo Helado truck arrives, he pulls inside the garage too. Mike hears the sound of power tools while Tio stands outside the garage smoking a cigarette, and as we know, Mike is basically trying to spy on him, and you can definitely tell this episode we're definitely setting up this huge conflict between Mike and Hector, because like I said, we don't know how Hector gets in that wheelchair in Breaking Bad. If we do, I mean, I didn't watch Breaking Bad, so I don't think we know how he did, but we know that both Mike and Hector are going to survive, and we know that Hector ends up in a wheelchair, so I'm thinking that Mike is the one that's going to put Hector in that wheelchair. Like I said in the last episode, I think it's going to happen here, and we see just basically, very interesting the way that was done. I definitely really like the way that we saw that, and also something interesting about it is that, as we know, fried chicken was a way that Gus Fring, smuggled drugs to and fro, and maybe Tio had the same idea with buckets of ice cream with guns, which is very interesting the way that is, and again, that was a connection that I didn't get, but definitely something that is interesting and I heard about, so I think that's very interesting the way that we saw that. Definitely really enjoyed that. If I had to have one complaint this episode, is that we didn't really focus on Mike and Jimmy, and I didn't feel the balance was as strong as it's been the past few episodes, because the past few episodes, it's really felt like we've been following Mike and Jimmy, and this episode definitely felt more like Jimmy than Mike, and it's not bad, it's just I kind of wanted a little bit more with Mike than we got, because I didn't think we got a whole lot with Mike, but I did feel we got a good amount, and I will admit there were some slow scenes in this episode, but let's just get into this episode, but let's get into the majority of this episode, because most of it did focus on Jimmy and Kim. As we know, she gave him that offer, and right away, we don't know if he took the offer or not, because we start with them at this hot dog eatery, ABQ, that's also a favorite of Jesse's, which I thought was interesting, with Kim, where they're celebrating their new joint legal venture. It turns out that he did, in fact, take the offer, and that they are going to do this together. Now, partners, 2 solo practitioners under the same roof, sharing operational expenses, and that's a clear distinction when Kim points out when she hands a resignation letter to Hamlin, and she's completely okay with this, because, Jimmy agreed to it, everything's okay, now they can do it, and Jimmy had advised her to try to lock down any clients she might have a chance of taking with her in her solo venture, namely Mesa Verde, before she told Hamlin she was vamoosing, but she once again pointed out to her boyfriend that it is not her way of doing things, that he is, I love what she says, you have your way, I do my way, I do things my way, that's just how it is, and basically, she might regret this the next day when she leaves Hamlin's office post resignation, and he immediately instructs his secretary to get Kevin from Mesa Verde on the phone because he basically he's thinking that she's going to go to Mesa Verde and that's where she's headed. But of course, that's not where she's going. And she didn't really tell them that she's not going to take the offer. And the resignation does go much better, though, than Kim expected, because not only does Hamlin forgive her law school debt to HHM, he basically says that this is their gift to her, but he also tells her he envies her fresh start and shares that he once had aspirations to make a difference in the world, and he's actually happy she's making this own company, because he wanted to do this on his own, and he never really got to, until his dad talked him into adding another H into the logo, which I found very interesting, and I like that we really saw this with Hamlin, because Hamlin a lot of times comes across as this really just serious, very just professional lawyer, and now we really see that this is not necessarily what he wanted to do. Yes, he's used to it now, but when he first started out, he really wanted to start his own company, and, his father's the one that told him to put the H into the logo, and still, when Kim hears about Hamlin's plan to talk to Kevin, she sprints to her office, calls Paige, her Mesa Verde connection, to confirm their upcoming lunch plans, and to share her solo practice jump, which, very interesting the way that was done. You can tell right away that she doesn't want this, she wants to close out this Mesa Verde thing as best as possible because she does want to run her own company, and I love the way that this was done. So Kim's meeting with Kevin and Paige nets her a double thumbs up from Paige. She sways Kevin by pointing out that his company would be her soloist practice-only client, and when she meets Jimmy to check out a potential office space, she giddily tells him she nabbed Mesa Verde's business, and she and JM decide to take the space where their offices will be side by side in a building that used to host to a dental practice, and I love the way the scene was done, where she walks in, and Jimmy's like, "What do you think of the office?" And she's like, "I think it's a dentist's office," so that was pretty funny, but we do see, and basically, everything's great, they're celebrating, it seems like they have Mesa Verde, they're on a good track, it really seems like, this company, like, it really seems like they know what they're doing, and I like the way this was done, that they pretty much think they have everything, they have the company, she closed things out with Hamlin, she's now left HHM, she's not doing Squicard, it really just seems like everything is on the right track, and it really seems like everything's okay, until Hamlin visits Chuck to tell him that they're almost certainly lost Mesa Verde's millions of dollars in business to Kim, who's left HHM to open an office with Jimmy. Now, Hamlin didn't really express any sort of, he didn't express any sort of regrets or seemed upset at all that Kim was leaving. It really seemed like he was okay with this. You're really starting to think that maybe he was hiding the fact that he was upset or that he was going to lose this stuff, and he basically confronts Chuck about it. And Chuck's very surprised that Jimmy's actually doing this and that Jimmy is doing this on his own. And we know the one thing that Chuck doesn't want is for Jimmy to succeed because he feels that this just isn't the career for Jimmy, that Jimmy just can't be a lawyer, as we know. And again, it's not because Chuck is malicious. It's not because Chuck doesn't want his brother to succeed. It's the fact that he does not feel this career is good for him. And so because of that, he does not want him to continue to be a lawyer. He wants him to do something else. And Hamlin asks him to download his knowledge of Mesa very specific banking practices so he can try to woo Kevin back to HHM. Chuck says he's going to go with Hamlin to the meeting instead, and basically it seems like they're going to start their own little thing against Kim and Jimmy, and with lights on, the elevators running, and cell phones rife in the HHM offices, Chuck goes in, he and Howard play up the firm's connections, and Chuck's expertise and decades of experience in dealing with the tricky to maneuver compliance issues Mesa Verde will have to address to explain its business, and the needs of Mesa Verde are too big to, and basically Chuck tells him that the needs of Mesa Verde are too big to handle, and while never, denigrating, he's not trying to say that Kim's not good at what she does, she did train with HHM, there is a problem with Jimmy, that's basically what this is all about. It's all about Jimmy. It's not about Kim. It's mainly about Jimmy. He doesn't want Jimmy to be there, and I really could see this as him getting Jimmy away from this company and kind of having Kim do this on her own, because I really do see Kim expressing a bit more interest in this than Jimmy did. I mean, Jimmy is not getting exactly what he wants, and I feel like that's kind of where we're headed, that Jimmy's kind of do his own thing, while Kim tries to run this company, and basically, Kim finds out from Paige that she won't get the bank's business after all, and she considers postponing the office space lens when she shares the news with Jimmy. He talks her into signing on, sharing expenses is one of the reasons they decided to do this, he tells her, and he's confident that she'll replace Mesa Verde in no time, so they sign the lease, but Jimmy is angry. He sees Chuck's efforts to save his firm's client as another personal attack against Jimmy, and he's pissed at Chuck. I mean, and he has a right to be pissed, because basically Chuck is trying to put them in jeopardy, which there, really is none of his business what they're doing. The problem is they are not on the same page at all, as we know. I mean, ever since the whole situation, with the whole situation with the commercial. Chuck has never been on board with Jimmy. He's been completely against him, and he even told Jimmy, I don't want you to do this. Remember, episode 4, he said, I don't want you to do this. I'm not trying to degrade you. I just don't think this is good for you, and I just want you to pick another career because there are better things that you're good at. And Jimmy didn't listen. That's why Chuck is now attacking him personally. And again, it's not all, I don't think it's about the fact that Chuck doesn't think he's good at what he does. I think it's just Chuck personally just feels Jimmy needs to pick something else because he's not good at this, because he doesn't play like a regular lawyer. He does his own thing, and that's what Chuck is not happy with. He doesn't want Jimmy to do his own thing. He wants him to play by the rules, and Jimmy, as we know, doesn't want to do that, which is clearly something that Chuck is really upset about, and I think they showed really well here. So Jimmy reunites with his young filmmaking pals for what appears to be another commercial shoot, and he scammed his way onto a military base where wheelchair-enabled hero Major Theodore Fudge Talbot wants to get a peek at a B-29 Super Fortress plane, which is where we get the name Fifi from, because that's what the plane is called. And Fudge is neither a war hero nor in need of a wheelchair. However, he is an old client of Jimmy's, and just like the other woman, I can't remember her name right now, who he basically, made it seem like she was in danger, he basically couldn't pony a payment when Jimmy defended him on public masturbation charges, and that's why he's posing as a war vet in front of Fifi. It's kind of like his punishment a little bit, that he, since he didn't pay the money, Jimmy's like, alright, you didn't pay me money, then act in my commercial. But basically, the wheelchair serves as the dolly Jimmy's often requested the filmmakers use, and I love that the filmmakers didn't really care. They're just like, alright, let's just get this done. I thought that was pretty funny. I definitely really enjoyed that. And apparently Fudge is actually the filmmaker's grandfather, which is pretty funny. And while on the shoot, Jimmy gets a call from HHM employee Ernie, who tells him Chuck is in a bad state. Jimmy guesses, and Ernie confirms. The episode comes after a Chuck visit to the HHM offices, and he had collapsed earlier the second that Kevin and Paige left HHM. And it does show that Chuck still needs Jimmy. Even though he doesn't feel he does, he still does. And Jimmy shows up at Chuck's house that night to relieve Ernie on Chuck's sitting duties, because he was looking after Chuck, and Jimmy wants to be the one to do it. But you really see that Jimmy can't really take care of Chuck anymore because they're not on the same page. And Chuck passed out. We see he passed out. Jimmy spots boxes of Mesa Verde files, starts to go through them. He selects certain pages and makes a pile, marking the spots where he took them from Post-its. Then, with Chuck still asleep, takes documents to a copy shop. I loved this montage, by the way. Just the way this was done, I thought was very well done. He uses old mailroom skills to cut, paste, and photocopy the new addresses into Mesa Verde documents. He takes the pages back to Chuck's and places them at the Post-it spots, with Chuck none the wiser that Jimmy has decided to be the wolf in the situation, where he sees Kim as Chuck's sheep. So if you remember, the wolf lies about things while the sheep doesn't lie. And it kind of goes with, now we know why we saw that flashback last week. Well, we kind of did, but at the same time, this really confirms why. Because in many ways, Jimmy is becoming like his father. And Jimmy settles into a chair near Chuck with a smirk on his face. And, Chuck is like his father, while Jimmy's kind of like the hustler in many ways. So I like the way that was done. And basically, Chuck knows that Jimmy's responsible for this. He knows that Jimmy's responsible. He doesn't say anything. But Jimmy does, in fact, confront him about Mesa Verde. Chuck tells him he didn't steal the business from Kim. He was simply trying to retain a client for his own firm. He doesn't want to fight, he tells Jimmy. He thanks him for staying with him overnight. He tells him that he knows they have their issues. But if things reverse, he hopes he knows that he would do the same for him. And you can really tell the blood is really starting to boil between these two. Which Chuck was, in fact, trying to steal the business. We can tell. We could tell he was trying to do that. But I really feel what this was about was Chuck trying to ruin things for Jimmy. Like, he was trying to steal the business from Jimmy. He wants to work with Kim and not Jimmy. I think that's really what it's about, because he feels that he's better qualified for that position than Jimmy, and he doesn't really want to admit why he's doing this. And I think that's very interesting. And it really shows that they're not on the same page, and that Jimmy wouldn't do the same. I think, we see that Chuck says that, but I don't think he would do the same. Definitely very interesting the way that was done. And the blood, you can tell, is definitely boiling between these two, and they're at a point where they really aren't agreeing on anything, as you can tell, which is crazy, but it definitely makes sense why things are so crazy there, and I like the way the blood is starting to boil there. So in the end of the episode, once again, we do see Mike again. Like I said, we didn't see a lot of him, but we get a very important scene here. He's hanging out with Kaylee, and I usually really like the scenes between these two. They don't usually mean a lot, but this episode, it did mean a lot. Because not only is Kaylee kind of like the girl to do things, but they've got a craft project happening, and Kaylee's using her newly learned fraction skills to help her grandfather measure increments on a garden hose, which I thought this was really cool. The way she used fractions to help him measure increments, I thought was really cool. And when Mike drills holes into the hose of the spots she marked, Mike finished the project himself after Stacy picks up Kaylee, and she does get to use the drill, which I was like, oh my god, I thought something bad was going to happen to Kaylee. Just the way that that scene was done, I really thought something bad was going to happen to Kaylee in that situation. Just the way that that was going, I was like, thank god. I was really worried that something bad was going to happen. I don't know why, just knowing it's based off of Breaking Bad. I know the show isn't as graphic as Breaking Bad. Well, it can be. We know, like, the fights and things like that. It's more of a dialogue-driven show, but I was really worried something bad was going to happen to Kaylee in that scene, and thank god it didn't, because I was really prepared for something bad to happen there. But he washes the hose thoroughly, removing fingerprints, we're thinking, and then while wearing gloves, he puts long nails in the hose that he and Kaylee drilled in the hose, and it's this really spiky hose with fingerprints carefully wiped away. We don't know what Mike really wants to do with it, but clearly this has to do with his showdown with Tio, and we don't really know what's going to happen there. We'll have to see, but that's how the episode ends, and I really enjoy this episode overall. Really crazy stuff going on. Mike and Tio, like I said, there's definitely going to be a showdown there. It's going to get really crazy, and I don't really know where exactly we're headed with this whole situation. It's going to be very interesting to see where that goes. Let's talk about Jimmy and Kim, though, because like I said, because Chuck is saying he didn't want to take Kim's position. Well, I don't think he wanted to take Kim's position. I think he wants to take Jimmy's position, because he just doesn't feel that Jimmy is right for this, and he wants to take him down, as you can tell, which is going to be very interesting to see where that goes, and I can't wait to see what happens with that. Jimmy clearly is trying to sabotage things for Chuck. Chuck is sabotaging things for Jimmy, and I can't wait to see how that whole showdown ends up, because we kind of have two showdowns going on. We have the very apparent, we have the actual violent showdown between Mike and Tio that's going to happen, but we have more of the quiet, but I think just as violent in terms of anger, showdown between Chuck and Jimmy, which I think they're showing very well. I definitely really enjoyed that. The season hasn't exactly been about Chuck and Jimmy, but Chuck's kind of been the person that Jimmy's trying to avoid, and now that things are going right for Jimmy, Chuck is getting in the way and trying to ruin them, because again, he just doesn't feel that Jimmy is very good at this and should be qualified for this kind of stuff. So very interesting the way that's going. The most guys saw this episode, another amazing episode, definitely really enjoyed. Like I said, some scenes were a bit slow, like that one scene with the film class, I just thought was a bit slow, definitely, but let me know what you guys saw this episode. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.